Today for the special presentation, my name is Aura Tanner, and I am a PhD candidate in the Instructional Technology program here at USF, and I had the opportunity this summer to go to Educational Testing Service for a summer internship, so I'm just going to share about that experience. And I'm going to be sharing some slides here with you. And we will get started. Thank you for I think you can you see that at all? Okay, so as I stated, for those who might just be joining, I'm a PhD candidate in the Instructional Technology program. I am the current vice president for this academic year of ITSA, which is our Instructional Technology Student Association, and this summer I was a ETS corporate fellow. So in this presentation, it's going to be very informal. I'm going to share with you just my experience at ETS, what it was like on a day-to-day basis, all the different people that I had an opportunity to meet, something I'm calling micro collaborations, which were opportunities outside of my internship where I was able to work with other researchers, just some general broad lessons that I learned, and then a Q&A session for anyone who might have questions. So the first thing I'm just going to kind of describe in general about the internship, kind of the application process. I had to go through their requirements and goals because, of course, for those who are especially in measurement and assessment, ETS is like the mecca. It's kind of like, how can I get there? How can I, work with all the amazing people that are there? So I was a part of, actually this summer was the most summer interns they had on campus. They had a total of 120 interns this summer, and that was across like 5 or 6 different internship programs. The one I was a part of was called the Summer Predoctoral Research Experience, and it's for those undergraduate and graduate student. Well, the SPRE is for graduate students who have not earned their PhD yet, so I qualified for that one. But how I came to end up at ETS is originally I applied for a fellowship there. So there was a Harold Gullickson Psychometric Research Fellowship. However, I did not get it, and it was more geared toward the statistical research they were doing. So they actually said, hey, you have a pretty strong application, so they forwarded it to the research intern, ETS research interns, but my background and my interests didn't really fit with the projects that they had available this past summer. The previous summer would have been perfect because they were doing game-based learning. So once again, didn't get accepted for that one, but they were like, you have a really strong application, so they forwarded it to the SPRE, which I was not even aware of. So I applied, and I was accepted. So kind of like a misconception about ETS is you have to be this genius and this whiz and statistics, and that was something that I found is not the case. They have people there that are like geniuses in statistics, but it's not like a deal breaker. If you don't have a strong stats background, there are people there who are like top researchers and they really don't know any stats. They can just go down the hall and have someone who does know how to do it for them. So that's just something I wanted to point out if you are thinking about applying. And then they look for people that are unicorns is kind of the phrase they use. So they're basically looking for people who have had not the traditional experience. So the people I was meeting there, like one person had been like a studio artist, A lot of people there have psychology backgrounds. There are people who have been teachers there. So anything I think that can kind of broaden their perspectives on how they approach problems in assessment and measurement is what they're looking for. And so I had to interview, like I had 3 different interviews that I had to do. There's kind of like just a general one. And from what I understand, this particular one, I think there were like 80 something people or something. And then they narrowed it down after that first one, like, hey, these are definitely people we want to interview. So that was around maybe like 50. And then they took that 50 down to the, they had 14 slots. And so then I made it through those first 2, and then I ended up interviewing with Dr. Jean Barry, who is over diversity inclusion department, as well as over several internship programs that they have at ETS. And something you also might want to note is that they're not looking at diversity purely from a race and gender issue. They're looking at it from experiences. So some people are older, some people are younger. Some people have gone through the traditional academics and schooling, some have not. So the interns I was with were just very vast. So there were people from Teachers Columbia College, from various countries. And I just thought that was interesting because a lot of times at Educational Testing Service, you might just think, okay, you have to just be one type of person, and that's not what they're looking for. So the more diverse, or the more you can paint the picture of the different experiences you've had that might have been interesting, then the better your chances, I think, that they'll see something like, hey, let's take a second look at that person. So the particular goals of this particular internship were for undergraduate and graduate students to kind of explore what ETS is all about and just educational testing and assessment in general. So it's basically kind of like an immersion experience into what ETS is, what they do, how they do it. So I was very excited, needless to say, to be selected to go there. So this is actually a picture of, which was another cool thing. They had a lot of cool perks. So I got to stay on the campus of ETS at the Chauncey Conference Center, which is basically a corporate hotel. So, you know, I had my meals paid for, really nice room with, you know, refrigerator and all the amenities you could think of, and 5-star chefs, and a beautiful campus. And they say they do that because they want you to start getting used to what it would be like if you were actually working as a full-time researcher in a professional environment. So if you're not familiar with ETS, it stands for Educational Testing Service. The campus is located in Princeton, New Jersey, just a few miles down from Princeton. So that was another cool thing, getting to go to Princeton. But ETS is the world's largest private nonprofit educational testing and assessment organization. And no one does it better than them, I can promise you. But a lot of people know them as, oh, that's that testing place. Oh, they're making it, you know, bad for our kids. But they actually have several divisions. So they have like a Center for Advocacy and Philanthropy. They have a educational policy research center. Research is another big one, business, finance, student and teacher assessment. So they do more than just testing, and they're doing a lot of research in a lot of very different areas that allow them to then create products to meet the needs of all learners, not just those in K through 12. So a little bit about what I did. First, I want to talk about just the ETS culture, just being there. And then my summer research project, what it was I actually did, and then some of the other professional development opportunities I had. So to kind of sum up, um, what the culture is like. It's very mission driven. So they're all about um, creating opportunities for all learners to have an equitable education. And so they're whatever they can do to reach that goal, that's what they're doing. But it's basically a place filled with people doing what they love for the greater good. So everyone I came across was like their area was the thing that they lived, breathed, ate, slept, were happy to do. Um, everyone was showing up, everyone was working hard. There was a lot of cross collaboration between groups and people on different projects. It was very upbeat, optimistic, problem solving environment. Um, I didn't see people like just standing around talking, wasting time. Every time I went by, people were really engaged in what they were doing, even in the lunchroom. Saw people excitedly talking about their progress they had made. Um, so it was just a very collaborative, um, critical thinking type of environment where everyone was working to solve problems in education, basically. So the area I was in was actually called NAEP, and NAEP stands for National Assessment of Educational Progress. And basically what that is, it's the only assessment given nationally here in the United States that kind of gives a common measurement of what our students know and can do. And it's given in several subject areas like math, science, reading, civics, geography, US history at grades 4, 8, and 12. And so there's a cognitive assessment piece that goes with the subject piece. And that's basically so there can be some context to the scores. So previously on the NAEP, they just kind of put out these scores like, hey, New Jersey, your fourth graders scored this amount. But now with this contextual information, we can see if a certain group of students, and that's one thing about NAEP, it's done at the group level. So it's not identifying any individual student. So if we see that, say, for instance, African-American students are not doing well, say, in math, we can look at the contextual information and see, okay, in general, overall, as a group, they don't have access to technology or the teachers are not creating opportunities to learn. So something exciting that happened in 2015 is the NAEP was before a paper and pencil administered test, but in 2015 they switched to a digitally based assessment. So it's all done on Surface Pro's tablets, and the new format actually allowed for timing data to be captured from these questionnaires, survey items. And so these questionnaires are given at the last 15 minutes after they take a subject test. And so basically what my job was to do, and they hadn't done it before, was to kind of figure out how long are students taking on different types of items. And these questionnaires are asking things about non-cognitive aspects such as perseverance or academic self-discipline or grit or just different things like that, the non-cognitive aspects. And that's the first time they have done those type of items. And then of course there's basic demographics items, and then there's items about opportunities to learn inside and outside of the classroom. So combining all of those, and then there are subject-specific questions on the questionnaire. So combining all of those, that creates a context for the scores. So it was basically my job, I'm gonna kind of switch over. That's a picture of my team to work with the NAEP survey questionnaire team to, as I said, figure out how long is it taking the students on these different types of items. And then they had some new item formats that they were trying out. So I was charged with finding out how efficient were those compared to the old item types. and basically what type of, if we were actually getting the information that we needed from the students. And so the client that we were working for this project is NCES, which is the National Center for Education Statistics. And they basically they want to reduce the burden for students when they're taking the questionnaire. Because if you think about it, they've spent all this time taking the subject test, and now you're asking them, to take another 15 minutes, and this contextual information is very important. So they basically want to build a more effective and efficient questionnaire, and there's a different questionnaire for each subject. So in science, they're trying to figure out the students' experiences with science. For math, they're trying to figure out what are the students' experiences with math and so forth. So it's something they're very excited about finding out how to do and the information we could glean from that. So that's basically what I ended up doing. And I'll share something else afterwards concerning that. But basically, they integrated me into their team. It wasn't like, oh, she's an intern, she's not doing anything. But I had to attend daily and weekly Scrum meetings, which are basically for 15 minutes, everyone goes around the table. You say what it is. I had to report on what I had did the day before, if I met my goals, and what I had two mentors who were actually over the NAPE area, and they helped me set goals for the internship. Like, these are the things, the deliverables we need you to have by the end of the summer, or going to try to have. But I also had personal research goals that I was able to look at. And since I was interested in game-based learning, there was time set aside for me. Oh, you're not sure if you can hear or not? Okay. So I was able to spend that time looking into game-based learning and meeting all kinds of top people in the field, which brings me to the next part. So the people that I was able to meet are basically the world's top researchers in measurement and assessment and in education, and they're literally down across the hall or in the office next to me. So if anyone was following me this summer, on LinkedIn, I was doing a lot of posts on just the different people that I was meeting. This is just a small sampling of people, but I literally probably met with 25 to 30 different top researchers. This here, if you can see my cursor, is Dr. Walt McDonald, who is the president of Educational Testing Service. So he's basically set the mission and setting the course for where the organization is going. Up here to the left is Dr. Malcolm Bauer, who, if you're familiar with Glass Labs, who is really huge in game-based learning. He developed some of their top games. Also over here is Dr. Andreas Aranja. He's also big in game-based learning. This picture right here, which I was really excited, it was like meeting like the president or something, I don't know, but is Dr. Robert Mislevy, who is the creator of evidence-centered design, which is basically the framework for anything you're doing in measurement, basically that's a complex task. Up here on the right is Dr. Joanna Gorin, who is the Senior Vice President of Research. And I believe she was a mentor of one of my committee members, Dr. Yishen Chen. So she's kind of setting and charting the new course for the research endeavors that ETS will be doing. This is another game-based learning. She specializes in microgames, Dr. Blair Lemon. And this gentleman is Rod Cologne, who was kind of like a master networker. And so we had one of him. But I met so many people that were assessment developers. And that's the other thing about ETS. I literally emailed Dr. Miss Levy, and he emailed me back. I'm like, is it possible for me to meet with you? And he's like, I'm here till 4 o'clock. If you can make it, sure. And so I was just able to go and meet with him. So even though these are like top people in the field and your textbooks and most articles you're going to be reading are by these people, they're very approachable. They love talking to graduate students. One of them told me is, we love talking to interns because you're going to give us some new insights, things we might not have thought about, fresh ideas. But they were just very open. And it wasn't like, of course they have busy schedules, but they were willing to fit you in. So that alone was just a phenomenal experience, getting to meet with just basically all the people who are writing all the articles and books that I'm reading. And as far as game-based learning, they've created those games, they've created these frameworks. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about what I called micro collaborations. So these are just kind of that I saw and took advantage of that were in my area of interest. So my summer internship didn't really have too much to do with what my research interests were, but the internship partners with different researchers and then tries to match the graduate students as closely as possible based on what the students' interests are. But one thing that I was grateful for was I really got into data mining, data analytics, because these are huge data sets. Like the data sets I was working with are like 100,000 students, so I have the large amount of data. And then I worked a lot with data visualizations, which is something I was interested in, but I actually got to do a bunch of it through this project. But this micro collaboration, I had a couple of opportunities. This one had to do with professional development of science teachers. And so you'll see there in the picture on that screen, it looks like 5 students. So this is basically an immersive, interactive world. And so you kind of see me holding up like a little speaker that you normally put on your lapel. And those students actually talk, react to what I was saying. So basically, I think these researchers were looking at how to train teachers to lead successful discussions in science classrooms. So I was kind of talking to them, asking them questions. They can actually submit you some of their work. You can look at it, and then based on what you see, you're talking to them. But there's actually somebody behind the scenes controlling all of them. But they had, since I had mentioned I had been a science teacher, they had 2 tasks that they were developing, and they were about to go live with testing it with some educators. So they asked me if I would take a look at it. Actually, it was 2 of them, one for science and one for math. So I was actually able to work with them, and they took a lot of my recommendations for the task. And one of them I had actually taught in school, so I was very familiar with it. And then I think they actually used some pictures of me interacting for some of their training manuals. So they contacted me afterwards to get permission to use certain things I had mentioned or said or recommended, and I was like, by all means. Another one I had was with culturally based competency. I was able to work with one of the researchers who once again was going to be working with teachers to train them in how to be more culturally competent. So there was a questionnaire that was kind of lengthy, and he kind of interviewed me, especially for people, since I worked at an inner city school, getting my insights on that. And so once again, he contacted me afterwards. Actually, I ended up meeting with him again because he wanted to get some more recommendations and insights from me. So those are 2 things outside. And so now I have those people as kind of contacts who can kind of vouch for the work that I did with them And this was in parallel with me doing my timing data-based, more analytical type of thing, project. So I'm just going to kind of sum it up here because I just want to keep this broad and general and just touch on some things. But one thing I learned while I was at Educational Testing Service just is the importance. Like I know in the news, assessment gets a really bad rap, but when I guess how assessment is being used in schools and states is not how it is intended on ETS's end. So when they see their assessments that were designed to measure what students can do being used to grade teachers or principals, they have like the utmost disdain, for what's happening. And they've actually issued statements alongside of the other organizations that scores that are used in this way should be invalidated. So, but I did realize just all the different ways assessment can be used. And they had so many different types of assessment that I was exposed to. So there was like conversation-based assessment and game-based assessment and cognitive assessment, diagnostic assessment. And they're really trying to help all people learn. So there are people working with those who are incarcerated. Like we need to be able to assess them so they can be able to develop their skills. And another big thing just being there, that diversity goes beyond race and gender. So it's like probably one of the most diverse places I've ever been at. So there are literally people from every field you could think of, just various backgrounds, from different countries. Like my supervisor was from the Netherlands, but I actually was able to sit down and talk with most of them. And the first question I would ask is, how did you end up at ETS? And they'd be like, oh, a funny thing. I never would have thought I would work here. But they said because of the culture there, they had to be a part of it. And that was just consistently said again and again and again. So it's just very, very open to different perspectives on approaching educational problems. And something else I learned was that research can inform educational policy. So they're not just trying to do research and make their products. They actually want to change education for the better. And so I had an opportunity through the internship to go to Washington, D.C. for 2 days. And we were actually able to present our research that we were doing, both our dissertation research as well as our summer projects, to people on Capitol Hill, which was very interesting. So you kind of have your elevator pitch because the politicians, they basically are like, what is it you're doing? Why should I care? And so you just had to kind of get to the point of what you're doing, why it's important, how it can help. So that's an area that I got very interested in as a result of being at ETS, is using research to change policy at whether it's at the district or the state, or even national levels. And then I also found out how open politicians or legislators are open to hearing about research because they're basically just looking for answers. And so if you want to meet with them, you can schedule a meeting and they would love to actually hear about your research. And then just the technology facilitates innovation. So a lot of the areas I went in, it was like something out of Star Trek or something because they are very cutting edge there. So they are trying to take advantage of all of the emerging technologies that are coming out and see if it's an effective way on assessing learners. So that's actually something I'm very interested in because there's always going to be a next big technology out there. So if you can harness that and use it to help people for educational purposes, that's definitely a win. And then the final thing is just, it's a very mission-driven organization. So Dr. Walt McDonald, who is the CEO, president, share just a lot of things they have in place to make sure that every single thing they do aligns with their mission. So they have like an outside mission council that does audits to see if they're following their mission with all their different research endeavors, business endeavors, philanthropy efforts. They have a mission rubric that if you come up with an idea, then it has to align with that rubric. And so stories were shared about how they've turned down contracts with potential clients because what the client was asking them to do didn't align with their mission. So I thought that was phenomenal and just awesome. So that's basically just a little bit of what my experience was like. And I want to mention, as a result of my work that I did this summer, our clients were very interested in what there was a big symposium at the end of the summer where we all presented our research, and people came from everywhere at ETS to view it. So I actually a proposal to NCME, which is the National Council on Measurement and Education, waiting to hear back from them because my supervisors thought my work was really good. And then they actually hired me on, I'm working part-time since September. So I have a 6-month contract with them, continuing to do the research that I started this summer. So that's very, very exciting. It pays very well. And so, and they're already talking about extending my contract past that. So who knows, it could lead to a full-time job. But basically, in general, not even just at ETS, but your research does matter. This is for other graduate students. And it can, if it's something you're really interested in or passionate about, it can lead to creating opportunities for you. So I continue on a weekly basis to interact with the different people from ETS, and I'm getting to know them more. They're getting to know me, my work. So it's exciting. So that is all I have right now, and I am going to see if there are any questions that anyone has, anything you'd like to know. And if you are interested in the specifics of my research, like I didn't want to throw up all of my slides and graphs and charts and visualizations for everything, but if you're interested specifically in the project, you can definitely contact me and I'd be more than happy to share. I'm trying to see. I don't see anyone. Is anyone in the chat or am I in another? Okay. Yeah, no, I know Amber was on. He said what? Oh, because I'm not seeing anything. Or could you type a test? Yeah, if you type a test, I'll see if I see anything. Waiting for what? When you try to type something into the chat window? There are comments. Okay, so if Amber could share the comments, because I'm not seeing them. Oh, maybe I'm on a different thing. Oh, okay, I see Amber's. This is on a different one. Okay, it says, is your project the same this fall? Okay. Yeah, so my project that I'm working on this fall, let me see. Okay. Yeah, so it's basically an expansion of the work I started in the summer, but now I'm just looking at different research questions than I was looking at. But I basically created this huge master file with all these different characteristics of the data that allows me to manipulate different aspects of the data from the questionnaires so that I can answer different questions. And so more and more questions have been coming up. I've been adding more, and I've expanded the grades because there was so much data. I originally did grade 4 and 8, but I've added grade 12. And for all these different subjects. So for math, reading, science, writing, before I wasn't doing all of those. So anything else? Anyone? Anyone? Okay. Well, if there are no questions, I want to thank everyone for showing up for the broadcast. I hope you learned something. And if you have any questions, I'm in the iTeach Lounge today until 3 o'clock. And if you want to know more about ETS, definitely stop by. So long. Farewell.